Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Class of '09, Season 1, Episode 3. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I find it so fascinating that also, obviously this episode in particular, mainly like 95% bounces back between the future and present. There's only one like past sequence in the entire episode, and that's like at the very beginning of the episode, like the whole driving situation of kind of like, oh, you got to learn like the J-turn maneuver, which we do see that at the end of it, Poet ends up nailing it. I'm curious, was she like the last one to get it or whatever? But either way, jumping to present day, obviously I think this is Poet's first day working in the same unit as Orr, and kind of getting introduced to her system. She had basically talked about kind of like this Z-index system from beforehand. It was like that. It was the first system that the FBI ever used. 11 million documents, 84 million names. But basically, because from her perspective, it's like the FBI is so reluctant to take those steps forward. Like for her, it's like my system gathers all this information, and it's a database that all FBI agents will have access to. Because from her perspective, it is a situation of people not being able to fully connect the dots. Like there's so much information there, but it takes good agents to have access to all this information that's there. And if you're able to immediately like have a pool of all this knowledge, of all the knowledge of agents before you, agents that you are, all of this could help like stop things from ever happening. That's what this has all been about. And once again, on the very Minority Report level of things of like preventing stuff. But obviously things kind of went beyond their control. But initially, that's what this was about. And obviously seeing it firsthand and learning what it's all about and seeing how Orr feels about it and understands that like this is like I don't know whether it's like the dream that maybe they talked about in the past, or whether, because it was like, oh, this is the dream of being able, I guess, to create a better world, to create a safer world, to create a fairer world. And Lennox ends up kind of talking about some of, not just his reservations, but some of the higher ups reservations about this, because they're like this. I mean, first and foremost, everyone's afraid, like, I mean, and this is a commentary on just like automation taking over every field and every job. But it's like, no, we don't want this system to end up like putting good agents out of their jobs. But for Orr, it's like, it's not meant to do that. It takes good agents in conjunction with this to have, this is only meant to be, in the broadest terms, it's just meant to be a library of information. It takes good agents to be the ones that take the information that's there to connect the dots. This is just meant to be, like I said, just a library, and you're supposed to be able to access it and do good with it. But everyone's worried, and in particular Lennox as well as others kind of bring up the point of, well, this is collecting a whole bunch of agents' data, like that's kind of like no one wants to be spied on, which Orr's like, I can get that. I can 100% get behind that, but it's not meant to spy on you. But for him, it's like, it's not just collecting relevant information. It's collecting irrelevant information too. But I guess that's the argument. You need a giant pool of information because you never know when and why something that was irrelevant could easily become relevant. I mean, which also kind of, I mean, this also plays into like some very, like, if you've never seen Person of Interest, this really dives into like some Person of Interest stuff, because it's on that same level, because that show is about a system that determines what's relevant and what's not relevant. So, and it's about it's literally the same concept. I can't believe it took me 3 episodes to think about that. I guess because it's just been so long since Person of Interest ended, but it's like, oh, if you've never seen it, I highly recommend, like, if you're enjoying this, like, Person of Interest is in that same vein of, like, there's a system that does, it's a whole thing. I highly recommend, if you like Class of '09, I would highly recommend checking out A Person of Interest. The show is done 5 seasons. Either way, the reason why they had Poet kind of look into it was like, right, I'm not here to spy on Orr's system. I'm here to like be able to mitigate her emotional response, because the FBI is worried. Like, she has been collecting secrets for 10 years. That's been her job. And the last thing we want, like that, because for her, this isn't just like some project that she adores. It is her everything, because she is someone that they even said in her, like, it's like, hey, she suffers from obviously kind of like a sexuality thing, because she a lot of people, I think, have picked up about her, like, she's kind of repressed in her own sexuality. She does not enjoy unpredictability. She has borderline OCD. I think they even said, like, she has OCD qualities to her. She does not get a lot of healthy amounts of rest and stuff like that. That she can be very, like, tunnel vision on something. And he's like, this is something, he's like, I don't need to tell you the names because you know the names of people who've gotten so obsessed. Like, their idea is their idea and they can't break away from it. They can't separate from it. And it's like, if we shut down a program, which we plan on doing, we don't know what her response is. And Poet's meant to be there. That's why they picked Poet, because legitimately everyone kind of already knows, like, kind of on some level, like, obviously they were always close. Maybe Poet's always known, but she's just always kind of like kept it in her head, just kind of like, no, that's like, she's always probably known how Oris felt about her, but she's just probably like been in denial, and everyone else can pick up on it, and so they're like using that of like, right, we know what that relationship is, so the news, it'll be a lot easier to kind of take that heartbreak of having her system shut down, her project shut down, if Poet's there to kind of mitigate some of that blowback and pain. So, but ultimately they always had the intention of, like, nothing she could say can change their mind, I think, because I think they'd already made up their mind about what this system is and what it could be used at. Because once again, it is that thing of, well, it's spying on so many people, it's gathering so much intelligence, it's just kind of like, should we really be letting this do that? So her project ultimately gets shut down, and she already knew exactly why Poet was sitting there, but she was like, right. Because it's like, well, how'd you know? And she's like, the moment they asked you to be hired at my place, I knew the only reason they do that is because they needed someone like you to keep me in check. Like, she knew from the beginning, but she's like, at the end of the day, I'm happy. Like, it brought us back together. So, I was able to show you what I've been working on, my pride and joy, and I'm happy about that. This is also at the time of her engagement, and she's getting engaged to a dude, so you're like, it just kind of makes you go, right. It might just be, it's probably a combination of just, like, it has to stem from religious stuff and just where her family's from, like, what really kind of ended up, like, sparking her, just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna marry, like, a guy. Like, we don't know what her prior relationships were like prior to 2009, or even in between 2009 to 23. We have no idea, like, what those relationships were like, so, but she probably only did that because she couldn't be with Poet, but also maybe to make her family happy, because they were probably like, right, you need to settle down type of situation. So I even get the feeling like Drew probably knew back then as well, because Drew got invited to the party and stuff like that. She's talking about, like, it's like, because Poet was like, oh yeah, what are the new trainees like? It's like, well, you guys are the best class. And she's like, I know you're just like saying it, because I'm sure you said it at every class, but she's like, no, I'm really proud of you two. You two of our best. And when, like, or it's like, oh, I want to steal her away, you can see that look on Drew's face. Like, Drew knows, like, how Or feels about Poet. So I think that was just kind of one of those moments then and there. Thought was kind of interesting. But at the same time, this is all going down. They are still trying to track down Mark. They were able to get one of his people, but the guy's refusing to talk. And just when Teo was considering to use Or's technology, the officer in the room kind of convinced him not to, because it's like, hey, this is going to end up replacing us. None of the other people want to use it. But what changed Teo's mind is when his family got attacked. Like, Mark sent his people to go after Teo and his family, his wife. Luckily, and unbeknownst to, like, his wife, what's her name, like, Vivian? Because I think he called her, didn't he call her Vi or something like that? It's something like that. I don't remember off the top of my head. But his wife was like, they pulled up with the truck, killed the cop, and then blasted her. But luckily, her windshield was bulletproof. And I was like, as she hit the first guy, I'm like, yeah. And then she kept ramming into the truck. So I don't know if the other guy, well, the way Teo talked about it, it's like the guy is dead. So she picked up the gun. I was almost hoping she'd double tap him. I was like, just to make sure. But luckily, they're okay. And even Teo was like, hey, if you need me to quit, I will quit. Because she had talked about the fact that she's dealt with death threats before, because Teo kept it to himself about, like, the death threats they had been given. But she's like, yeah, I've faced him before, but I think for him, it became even more real. I don't know what her position is. I don't know if like is she a politician or someone and just in general in politics, whether it's like a congressperson or something. Is like that why you got death threats, or is it just because you're married to an FBI agent? Once again, even Teo talking about the fact is if, hey, I never thought I'd end up with someone. He thought he'd spend his entire life alone, and now it's like I can't imagine my life without you. She's like, yeah, but you don't have to protect me from the world. He's like, don't I? That is my one job in this world, is to protect you. So he's like, if you need me to, I will quit in a heartbeat. She's like, well, what are you going to do if you quit? And he's like, I'll take care of the kids. It's like, we don't have any kids, you know? But, because at first I was thinking like something had to have happened to her to push Teo to be on the very, once again, minority report level scale that he's at right now. Like, I figured something had to have, like, happen, and of course like his wife dying could end up being a catalyst event, but we also know like there's 44 agents that end up dying because of Mark's attack. We don't fully know what motivated him, but I mean it's just like what motivates any person to do what they do in any terrorist, because once again that's what he is, because he believes he's on the right side of things, and once again he must be very like anti-establishment, anti-government, and for him this is the only way to be seen and be heard and take down the man type of thing. I don't know what his full-blown motivations, and I think maybe the point that we don't really know, at least here in the story, I guess because we don't know, it's kind of supposed to be that point of like the motivation isn't always important, it's just the actions that are, and trying to stop those actions. But Teo's wife getting attacked made him decide that he was going to call up, or he was like, yo, I need to understand your technology and how the system works. And as he's sitting there with the guy, and I love that, like, obviously the thing that he talks to the guy about, like, right, there's a notion that basically it's in spite of how hard you try, and sometimes simply because of how hard we try, at the end of the day, we always reveal ourselves. Because it's like when we try not to reveal anything about ourselves, and because we're trying so hard, that in itself, it's kind of a catch-22. And in that moment, sitting down with him for 6 hours, he started noticing something, and so he ends up the guy had been drawing the entire time that he was, because he had already been held 24 hours, and they were going to hold him another 24 hours, but he hadn't said anything in the first 24 hours. So while Teo was sitting there with him for the 6 hours, he ends up taking the thing that the guy's drawing, he removes the paper he was drawing on, and there's just a clipboard, and he like does the pencil thing of like shading it in, because it's been etched into the cardboard or the clipboard. And so, not cardboard or the clipboard, just the clipboard in general. And so, the camera catches this, the system catches this, and Orr and her people are running down what the possible, like, thing could be, which Poet's there to be like, yo, you can't do this, we need authorization. She's like, yes, but this is one of the most dangerous men in our country, and the fact of the matter is there's an active investigation, so yes, we're being shut down, but we're still active right now. And it's like, I guess Orr suffered some ramifications from that later, but this in turn, you can tell, probably ended up boosting her system to be in this position that it is in the future, but we'll get to that soon enough. But they ran down like, all right, this is a symbol of a cult. It's like related to some cola, or it's part of a construction company, which we saw earlier in the episode that Mark and his people are in a construction truck. He's hidden in like a fake wall of it. So when it's all said and done, where did Teo go next? Right, they try to find that construction company, but while the system's doing its thing, they end up tracking down a truck from that construction company. The police roll up, kill like some of the other people, and find Mark in the back. But before he's caught, he burns the blueprints of what he was planning. And so later on, Teo's sent to interrogate him. But he's like, no, I'm actually happy you're here. I get the best seat in the house. I get to look you in the eye when you hear the news. And he's like, the news about what? And it's the attack on what ended up happening. So, I mean, we haven't gotten to that point present day, but that's got to be what it's about. I don't know if this attack is what it sent Teo down the path he's going down, but also it's what put Orr's system into the place that it is, which in the future we have Poet going to Orr's place, which I think is interesting that she has magnetic stuff to shut down any electronics, which included Poet's vehicle as well as her left eye. And so she gets to meet Orr's family, and it's like, I wasn't sure how Orr was going to respond because Poet was like, yeah, we haven't seen each other. We haven't talked in 9 years. So I wasn't sure. I was like, is it going to be a hit? Is it going to be a hug? But it's like, yeah, let me introduce you to my family. And it's like, oh, are you my mom's friend? And Orr's like, yeah, she was my best friend. And so they kind of talk about a little bit of the history that we haven't gotten to yet. But that is that Amos Garcia is the one that stole Orr's system all those years ago. I mean, we don't know when, but he hijacked it and I guess played a role in turning it into what it is now, or maybe Teo did. But her system isn't what it used to be. It is corrupted. It has been changed into something that it never was before. And because for her, it's like like all you had to do was trust me. But Poet was like, at the time, I couldn't. There wasn't enough. It's like, no. It doesn't matter what was known at the time. You should have trusted me, but you refused to listen because Orr's the one that predicted the situation that they would be in right now, that the system will be used in the way that it is used now, to kind of arrest people before they've even done anything. That it was meant, once again, it was meant to be an addition. It was meant to be a tool, not something that was completely supposed to be relied upon, like what it has become. And so it seems like the real reason why things kind of broke down between Poet and Orr is because of this. It's like, you betrayed me. You were my best friend. You also knew how I felt about you because you knew it was too intimate for you to take my side in this situation after I expressly told you how I felt about you, that I was in love with you. So you couldn't, because once again, it's something that also ties back to present day with Lennox when he had talked to Poet about, hey, we can't let... It's kind of like we can't let our biases and stuff like that influence us, even though you can't get rid of your biases. But it was kind of saying like we shouldn't be letting like our emotions get the best of us. We're supposed to kind of remove that from the equation. But it's like, and that's what Poet was trying to do. She felt like if she gave in too much to the fact is that, or loved her, if she let that like influence her decision, she would have taken Orr's side. But it's like, I can't let that intimacy get in the way. So it's like you went the other side of things just so you wouldn't be biased based on how Orr feels about you. That was kind of it. But it's like you kind of you go the opposite direction, not because you fully believed it, but it was just your overcompensation for finding out about how Orr felt about you, which I think you always knew because you kind of felt a similar way. Which makes me, and the way like Orr touched her face made me go like, did something happen between you two? And it's unclear whether or not it did. Because maybe they could have had like a Ivy and Harley situation, specifically season 2 of the show. This is kind of spoilers, but we're already going into season 4, so sorry. But yeah, they hooked up a couple times, but like, because Harley kept denying how she felt, and so did Ivy. So I wonder if it was a thing of maybe Poet and Orr did hook up, but never like officially got together, or maybe it's just always this unspoken thing, like nothing ever did happen between them, but maybe they were on the cusp of it. But either way, Poet is here now because she needs Orr's help to kind of stop the system, to find out what Amos Garcia had given her before he died. And so they're on their way back, and Orr's driving her car, but it's like, wait, why are you driving? It's like, well, because I like to drive. And then all of a sudden, like, their car gets high, like, it's like, wait, there's like information out about us. It's like, wait, why is all that, like, the information is not supposed to be publicly shared? It's like, yeah, even the fact that you have a firearm in the car, it's like, well, why is that? It's like, well, it's because you're driving. I guess, like, everything's so automated now that it's like, it's weird that someone's driving, because even the cops are like, why are you driving? And she's like, because I like to drive. And so it labeled her as like a potential threat, which maybe the system's reading even more into it, but the system doesn't I mean, who knows what the system knows, but it would see her more as a threat. In particular, Poet and Orr together is kind of like, oh, that's weird, that's funny that you're driving. That's weird. And we even see that Teo is looking at that video from the cops as they're like, because all that's happening real time is it's getting sent back to Teo, because he's seeing probably everything that the cops see in real time. It's more advancement of like the body cams that cops are supposed to wear, because it's all connected to the system and it's like updating live. But it was almost kind of this thing of like, why did that happen? But it also proves how far, because I think Or's been away from this for so long. She's been so isolated from it. Once again, she doesn't want that information, like her information, out there in the system. So, ironically enough, it is a little ironic because the system that she was like, right, we don't want it spying on people, which she was all about, like, not spying on people. But she's like, yeah, that's information. It's fine. But now that information is now used against people the way it has, both this relevant and irrelevant information. But to be fair, that was based on the system that Orr had originally made. Once again, it's simply supposed to be a library. They go back to where Amos Garcia was, and no one was able to get the computers back on. The thing that he had given her, Poet puts it in the system, and it turns everything on. And looking at the code, or it's like, this isn't my system. My system still relied on agents. This thing is making decisions on its own. It's taking the information and making, like, judgment calls on its own. The point was, it's supposed to gather the information. It's just meant to be a library. Agents pick at it, but it's are able to kind of be the ones to connect it. It still needs a human there to kind of like piece it all together. But now this thing is making jumps and leaps on its own. So the system has grown so advanced, it's acting on its own. It's kind of got a life of its own. There's no agent behind it. And then you have Amos Garcia like having a hidden message to Poet saying, "You've been lied to. Find out what Teo really knows." And you're like, what does that mean? Like, it's because he's the main force behind this. Once again, he's the one that told the Senate or Congress people, I think it was like the senators he was talking to. He was talking to the Senate about, hey, I need 5 more years to kind of perfect this. This is still in its infancy and ages, but it's like, it's still doing good. It could be better. So we don't know what this cost him. We don't know if he's still married in the future or not. So it's going to definitely be interesting because now it's going to pit. Once again, it's just interesting to see where this class has ended up, how they've been divided, how where they are, like, because now it's going to definitely pit Teo and against Orr and Poet, because obviously, God, what's that? What's that terminology past this prologue? Is that phrase? I'm thinking of it. There's a TV show that had that title. I can't. It's something fairly recent enough that I'm like, past this prologue. I know that. I just don't. Was it The Flash? It had to be something with time travel. But it almost feels like futurist prologue in this particular regard, because everything is influenced by the past, the present. The past always influences the future. The decisions that were made, the things that had happened, the things that you couldn't stop from happening. So there's so many gaps we still need to fill in. Obviously, the next episode is episode 4, and I believe there's only 8 episodes, so we're about to hit the halfway mark next episode. After next episode, we'll be hitting the halfway mark, but you get what I'm saying. I'm curious to see what ends up happening with the whole future Orr and Poet, because obviously it's like, Orr staying at Poet's place while they figure this all out, but it's like, she hasn't had anyone. She says she tried to make something happen, but she tried a relationship or something, but it just never worked out. And she's like, right, it's better to be alone, be without someone than rather staying with the wrong person. It's better to be without them than trying to stay with the wrong person. So I'm assuming that's something that happened post Linux. I guess that's like post Linux, and so anywhere between like in these past 11 years something happened, or once again, if something happened between Orr and Poet before they hadn't seen each other in that 9-year period. I was wondering whether or not something was going to happen at the very end of the episode between them, but I think it's just the weight of all these decisions and choices that you made, the sacrifices you made, decisions that you made that maybe you wish you could go back in time and handle them differently. So I think it's just a lot, the loneliness that the life is that Poet has. And I think it was just I lost this very important person to me in my life, and just having her by her side again, like sleeping next to her. Like I said, I thought something was going to happen, but I think it's just like, hey, I'm here to comfort you. So there's a lot to keep in mind as we go forward. It's definitely going to be interesting to see where all of this ultimately ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day.